This video is sponsored by Skillshare. When Tesla announced the full self-driving subscription, I, along with I think a lot of other people, were really excited because this was a feature we were hoping for a long time. The thought of buying full self-driving at that $10,000 price, just buying it outright, especially buying it afterwards and not including it into the price of the car, that was a tough pill to swallow. And there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't buy the full self-driving subscription up front, but now the subscription is here. I've been using it for a few weeks, almost a month now, and I have some thoughts. So up front, I think it's important to note the reasons why you wouldn't get the full self-driving package in its full price, why you wouldn't spend that $10,000 up front. Obvious first one is the price. I mean, it's just too expensive. You can't afford it. Of course, that is the main reason I think for a lot of people. But I think the second runner up, and maybe even first for a lot of people, is that the package offers a lot, but it is nowhere near full self-driving. Like, it's not a full self-driving package. Now granted, Tesla is making very big leaps and bounds towards that. They have the version 9 of the full self-driving on city streets beta out right now for certain customers. And at the time of this recording, I mean, it seems to work really well. Obviously it's still in beta and there's a lot of testing and a lot of tweaks that have to be done to it, but it's still very impressive software. But even if you have full self-driving, you're not getting this right now. And it's clear, at least to me, that this package is basically a way to fund the production and the development of full self-driving tech. And if you're willing to pay for that, more power to you. I don't think there's actually anything wrong with that. If you are willing to pay that money, I think that's a great thing. And hopefully in the future, that will lead to all of us having full self-driving cars. I see nothing wrong with that proposition. But that doesn't negate that you're still spending $10,000. And for someone like me, that just wasn't something I was ready to do. It just didn't seem worth it at the time when I got my car in 2019. And now that I've subscribed to the full self-driving package, I'm actually glad that I didn't buy or spend that money on the full self-driving package. To me, it's just not quite worth it. So first off, as just someone who loves technology, I love this package. I think it's super fun to use when you're on the freeway, the navigate on autopilot, the auto lanes change, the summon, the smart summon. All these features are just super cool and super fun to play with. But then, you start to get into your daily routine. The novelty of it really wears off quickly, and then you just start to use it. And that's where the worthiness of this package, at least for me and how I use my car, is starting to come into question. Okay, so there's a bunch of different scenarios of who would be driving and what kind of driving style you have. So I'll just describe mine, and if it aligns with yours, then maybe that'll let you know if this is worth it or not. So I work from home. I don't have a daily commute, although my wife does. She does commute about 15 minutes away each day. But because of where we are in the city, there's only one freeway exit ramp for her whenever she gets onto the freeway. The rest of it is just surface roads. So really, the only time we're using the navigate on autopilot features and all the upgraded autopilot features is on the highway, like on the weekends when we're going on a trip, or if we're going like shopping or something like that. Other than that, we don't really have an opportunity to use the full self-driving features. Now, this wasn't always the case. Back when I lived in California and when I first got my Model 3, I actually commuted quite a bit. We would travel from Orange County all the way to the San Gabriel Valley a few times a week. And for that, we used autopilot every single day in the Model 3, and it was excellent. And that was a time where I probably would have loved having the full self-driving subscription. On that commute, I would transfer from one freeway to another, so having the navigate on autopilot features would have been very nice. But now that we don't really have a commute, the highway autopilot features are only things that we can use on special occasions when we're doing something out of the ordinary. Now, in terms of functionality for navigate on autopilot, it did take me a few days to get used to it because, I mean, the car kind of has a mind of its own and it does what it thinks is best. Now, first, when I started using it, I very much was, let's just say, nervous using navigate on autopilot because of the mind of its own. But once you get past the initial changes, it does seem to work very well. The lane changes are pretty fast considering it's doing it itself. In my experience, it stays out of the fast lane, which is good. That's following the rules. And when you need to do a highway interchange and go to a different highway or get to the exit ramp, it's impressive how well it does that. But it is not perfect. So here's how I sum up navigate on autopilot. And I guess you can throw smart summon into this because it's kind of the same category. I'm never worried that the car is going to hit anything or hit anyone or do something that is going to be super unsafe. But what I do feel is that it's making everyone around me really mad. So for instance, I'm in a lane going down the highway and it wants to make a lane change. Puts on the blinker and it waits to make sure everything is clear, you know, does all the checks, make sure you're paying attention, all that stuff. That's fine. But then there's a car next to you in the lane you're trying to go in that's zooming up. Well, the car will just go into it. Now, yes, the car behind me is not going to hit me. It has plenty of time to slow down, but that car's now mad at me because I shouldn't have got in front of it. But technically, the car has room, it has space to do it, and like from a rules of the road thing, it didn't really do anything wrong. It's just, as a courteous driver, I shouldn't have done that. There's a lot of those type of situations that I find with Navigate on Autopilot, and I just find myself having to baby the system a little bit more, not because I'm worried about safety, but because I'm worried about looking like a jerk on the road. But even still, I mean, the Navigate on Autopilot features are really impressive. It's just that for me, I don't have enough opportunities to use them, but honestly, I wish I could use it more because it is just really cool and fun. Now, like I said, there are some, I would consider novelties that are fun to use and that I do actually use on occasion, at least in the past few weeks that I've had this. Summon, for instance. The Smart Summon feature is a fun demo, but I have never actually used it. Because one, I haven't really had a reason to, but the times that I did try it just for fun to test it out, I don't know if I would really trust it in a real world scenario, unless it's just an empty parking lot. Other than that, I'm still a little hesitant on Smart Summon. But the regular forward and back summon, I have actually used quite a few times in real world scenarios when it just is a little too tight. I remember I have that feature and it's like, man, might as well use it, and it does come in handy. Sure, I could squeeze in and get into the car no problem, but it's like, the feature is there, this is something I'm paying for, might as well use it, and it does work as advertised. Another feature that has come in, somewhat handy is the traffic control detection. So the stoplights, the stop sign, that kind of thing. So a lot of the highways around me actually have stoplights every few miles. And normally when you're on autopilot, if there's not a car in front of you, then you're kind of screwed. You just have to stop yourself. But having the car do it itself is very interesting and very cool at the very least. And it does come in handy so you don't have to disengage. And also like the chime on the green light. That comes in handy a lot. Okay, so before I continue, I want to thank this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Now, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes in really anything in the creative field. So photography, design, videography, illustration, even business. I mean, really anything you can think of that's in that creative field, Skillshare has a class for you. And they offer classes that aren't just for beginners. Whether you're an expert or just starting out, you can find something that works for you. Sometimes I do know a little bit about a subject, but I want to dive deeper, learn something from someone new, and Skillshare is a great way to do that. But even still, if you don't know anything and you just want to dip your toes, see if it's something you'll enjoy, you can do that very easily with Skillshare. Now, one of my favorite classes right now, I've talked about it a few times, is from Jessica Kobasi. It's about portrait photography. I love photography. I do photography all the time, but it's not typically portraits. I'm just not very good at that. So having a class like this, I can learn new things, and it really helps me get inspired to get out there and do better portraits. And there's tons of classes like this for really any subject you can think of. And I think it's really important to make sure you keep learning, especially things that you haven't learned before, because there's so many options out there. So if this sounds like something you want to try, all you have to do is for the first 1,000, you need to check the link down in the description. You click that link, sign up, and you will get a free 1-month trial of Skillshare Premium. So go ahead and check that out and get learning. Now, all those features are pretty good and they have their quirks, but they do work pretty much as advertised. But there is one feature that is, it's absolute garbage. I don't even know how Tesla is still shipping this, and that's the auto park function. First, I could barely get it to work. You have to have 2 cars between the space for wherever you want to park for it to actually recognize that that's a parking space, which is kind of silly considering it can see everything around it, but it still needs to see the 2 cars. That's a pain in and of itself. But then once you actually have a spot that could potentially work for auto park, it just doesn't work half the time. It doesn't pop up the notification that you can park here. And then once you actually do get one that works, half the time, at least in my testing, it quits halfway through because something went wrong. For instance, I was doing auto park in my driveway. There's a little bit of a lip into the driveway and it just couldn't get over the lip for whatever reason, even though that's something I do every single day and it's not a big lip by any means. The auto park functionality I've used in many other cars and it works great in most of those. The Tesla has no excuse being this bad. It's bad. Tesla's got to fix this. So yeah, I mean, that's really how I feel about the full self-driving package and a lot of the features that go into it. So the question is, I subscribed to full self-driving for this month. Will I continue to do it month over month? And for me, the answer is no. It just isn't worth it for me. And if you have a lifestyle like me where you aren't doing very many highway miles, it probably isn't worth it for you either. What I will be doing though is subscribing if I have a long trip ahead of me. So if I'm gonna be doing more than like a 3-hour trip, I may consider subscribing to full self-driving just so I have those autopilot features. The other thing that will get me to resubscribe to full self-driving is when the City Streets beta gets released for everyone. I would definitely want to try that out. And if it actually works as advertised, well, I'm gonna probably want to do that every month because, you know, city street driving is something everyone does. And at that point, the car basically can drive itself. So the price of the monthly subscription and honestly, the price of the full self-driving package is kind of worth it at that point, at least I think. Now, on the other hand, if you are planning to use the monthly subscription every single month, you should look at how long you're going to do that, because at a certain point after a few years, it's going to equal the cost of the regular full self-driving package. So it's probably worth just buying it outright anyway. But if you're just going to subscribe for a month here and there, you're definitely saving money here. Now, that being said, I am really glad that Tesla decided to offer this as a subscription service, but I would like to see them take it a step further. Here's what I'd like to see Tesla do. I want to see Tesla offer more a la carte options. So before, there was an option where you can get enhanced autopilot, which would give you a few extra features, and then you can get the full self-driving package on top of that, and that would give you the whole shebang. Now they took away the enhanced autopilot here in the United States, and you can't get that anymore. You can only get the full self-driving package. But for certain cars like the standard range Model 3, you can buy an upgrade for the rear heated seats. That's not something that comes standard, but the hardware is there. You can just buy it on your phone, and now you have rear heated seats. Or premium connectivity, you can subscribe to that every month. And if you have a long range Model 3, you can get the performance boost, which gives you a faster 0 to 60 time for $2,000. So I would like to see more of those features come. I mean, I would gladly pay, I don't know, $500 for auto lane change to be added to my autopilot suite, or let me buy Summon as its own feature if that's something that I feel like I'm gonna need all the time because maybe I have a tight garage or something like that. I feel like Tesla could really milk more money and in turn make happy customers because they can get exactly the features that they want by doing a system just like this. And they obviously can because it's just software and they can offer pretty much whatever they want. Now, as for the price, I do think it's a decent value for $200. It's expensive enough that, you know, there is at least in theory some incentive to get the full package at a certain point at least, but it's also cheap enough that people like me and people who are hesitant are willing to try it. If it was like at that $99 price point for the full self-driving package, I'd probably do it every single month, but $200 is at that threshold where I can't quite justify it. So I think from Tesla's perspective, this is a good price, although of course, I do wish it was a little cheaper. So that is my experience with full self-driving and a full self-driving subscription. Now, is this something I'm gonna get every single month? I don't think so. It's just not for me. And if you're someone who uses your car like I do, you don't have much of a commute and you don't really go on the highways, I'm not quite sure full self-driving is for you either, but the fact that it is here as a subscription is, I think, a big deal. And it does let you try it, and who knows, maybe you will absolutely fall in love with it and it will be something that you use all the time. But I'm really just glad that Tesla decided to offer this because it's a great step in the right direction, and really, I just can't wait to see full self-driving become full self-driving. And then I think all this will be a completely different story.